Ben Shapiro is a syndicated columnist and editor-at-large of Breitbart News. Welcome to both of you. Let me just read you the language that Rand Paul is suggesting. Congress shall make no law applicable to a citizen of the United States that is not equally applicable to Congress. Kirsten, who can argue with that?
Well, it's kind of sad that we would need to pass a law that says that, right? It seems sort of obvious. And so, you know, I'm of mixed feelings of this. On the one hand, it seems like, yeah, why not? This should be the way that it is. On the other hand, is this really the biggest problem, or even a big problem that we face in this country? And I know that the primary example I think he's using is the Affordable Care Act, and Republicans have kind of exaggerated what's gone on there in terms of the so-called congressional exemption. It's not much of an exemption. They've just basically are going to be in the exchanges, and they're going to get the subsidies to offset what they're losing from moving out of their old health insurance. Exactly.
So let's talk about that, Ben, because that was the genesis, I believe, of what Rand Paul is suggesting, which is that Congress will be forced to join Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, starting January 1st. However, they will continue to receive, as Kirsten just said, the federal subsidies. Not all Americans will be able to receive federal subsidies. It depends on your paycheck. Should Congress?
Of course not. I mean, Congress is very friendly to itself, which is no great shock here. The fact is that Congress has exempted itself from many a law in the past, including insider trading laws. It shouldn't be the case that you go to Congress and then when you leave, you're significantly richer than when you came to Congress in the first place. It's what creates that trust gap. But, I mean, as far as a constitutional amendment, I was under the impression that the 14th Amendment provides equal protection under the laws, so I'm surprised that we feel we need a separate constitutional amendment to enforce what's already in the Constitution.
Kirsten, you know, some people have made a big deal that the president and his family and his cabinet secretaries and their families will not have to join the Affordable Care Act. Should they have to?
I guess, you know, it's one of those things that it's a little complicated to get back to how that actually happened. The fact that Congress is under the, you know, going into the exchanges and the executive branch isn't, has to do with just sort of congressional maneuvering that went on. I can't remember which Republican initially proposed it as kind of almost like a poison pill, and then Democrats decided that they liked it, and that's how it sort of ended up in the bill. And so it was, you know, the thing about it is that the exchanges aren't really set up for major employers, right? They're for individuals and for small businesses, and so the federal government is a major employer, and so it doesn't make sense to put them in it because that's not what they're for. Right. And so I guess if you're, you know, but I think if you're a person who doesn't like Obamacare, you're thinking, well, this is terrible, we should make them be in it. But I'm not sure that that was the purpose of Obamacare in the first place.
Sure, but it also just has exactly what we're talking about, that whiff of special treatment, that everybody is subject to things.
Well, not really.
I mean, it's just what Ben raised. The insider trading loophole, all of the loopholes that Congress gets. This feels like another loophole that, once again, they've managed to skirt something that other Americans can't.
But I would say it's not a loophole in this situation just because it wouldn't apply to Microsoft, for example. It wouldn't apply to any major employer. The U.S. government employs so many people that this is just how Obamacare is structured. And the fact that Congress got put in it is sort of an unusual thing. It wouldn't have normally been part of
Ben,
it.
are you cool with that?
I'm not cool with it. I mean, the fact is that David Vitter put forward an amendment that would have forced all of these Obamacare exemptions or subsidies to go away, and then Congress objected to it and didn't put it through. And this is what we're constantly seeing from a Congress that is mostly interested in enriching itself. I mean, as Peter Schweitzer has pointed out in his new book, Extortion, the fact is that Congress members are constantly using these loopholes in order to do more for themselves than they've done for the American people. And that's why you're seeing this huge gap in public opinion. We hate Congress, and there's a reason we hate Congress.
She voted for Hillary Clinton because Hillary was a woman. And I asked her why exactly that mattered to her, why that was so important to her. And she really didn't have a great answer, just kept saying it was because she was a woman. I said, well, would you have voted for Sarah Palin if Sarah Palin were running? And of course she said, no, I wouldn't have voted for Sarah Palin if Sarah Palin were running. So I said, it's really not about her being a woman, it's about her being a leftist. And she said, she kind of acknowledged the point, and she said, yeah, but I really want a woman. And this is the problem that everybody in this room faces, is that if you are a person on the left and you see a woman on the right, that means that you are not really women. Right? You're all fake women all out here in the audience. Right? And we know that because, for example, you don't win track meets while being a biological man, so you're not a real woman. And it's just demonstrative of the fact that for the left, the demonization of conservative women is extraordinarily high. Sarah Palin is not a real woman, so she doesn't fall into that category. Hillary Clinton, however, is a real woman. Like, by the way, Hillary says she's exactly like Wonder Woman, which makes perfect sense if you're crazy. I mean, have you seen the movie? I too would like to see a woman president. I do. And I would like to see it be somebody in this room. Somebody with the right principles. In this room are the leaders that the country needs, not just right now, but 10, 15 years in the future when you're actually old enough to run. The people in this room are going to be leading the country, and they should be leading the country, because great female leadership is just great leadership, period. And great female conservative leadership is great conservative leadership, period. So I want to talk about, I guess the theme of today is how to be brave. So I want to talk about 5 things I think that everybody can do, men and women alike, to be brave out there in the political world. So 5 things. The first thing is that you have to be brave enough, and this is something I think we on the right understand. You have to be brave enough to understand that your life is in your own hands. One of the great myths that's handed down to women of all ages across the country by the left is the idea that you are inherently victims of the system. And I see even some conservative women fall for this sort of thing. The idea that the American system is out to screw you somehow, that it's out to get you, that you're victims of a rape culture, that you're victim of a culture that wants to pay you less, that you're victims of a culture that is attempting to keep women back, hold women back, keep women down. This is absolute sheer nonsense. Women have never had it better in the history of humanity than in the United States in 2017. And I think that my wife is a great example of this. She's really able to have everything. She's a doctor. She has 2 kids. And the fact that she's able to live that life in America in 2017 is a testament to the fact that America is such a wonderful place. And that means that when people talk about a glass ceiling, there isn't a glass ceiling except in your own head. Except in the heads of people who put the glass ceiling there. There is no glass ceiling. And it takes a little bit of bravery to acknowledge that your life is in your own hands, that what you do with your life is your responsibility, that it's nobody's fault but your own if you fail in the United States as a general rule. You can do anything. You are capable of doing whatever it is that you want to do. That doesn't mean that everything's going to go your way. It doesn't mean that everybody is going to help you out the way that you would hope that they do. But no one cares enough to stand in your way. And if we're brave enough to acknowledge that freedom comes with responsibility and risk, then we are going to be able to succeed as Americans together. Second point, we always have to be brave enough to tell the truth. And for people who are interested in politics, this, of course, is the hardest thing, because there's always this tension in politics between telling people what they want to hear and telling the truth. Most people want to hear lies. Most people want to hear things that they want to hear all the time. And, I mean, you know this from your relationships. I know this from my marriage. Sometimes you don't want to say things to people you care about because you don't want to hurt their feelings. But in politics, it is imperative that you say things that are true, even if it hurts the feelings of people on your own side. So truth above partisanship. And never has that been more true than right now. Never has that been more true than right now in this moment. Because right now, Republicans, conservatives, Republicans, run the House, they run the Senate, they have the White House. And the temptation is to follow whatever it is that Republicans do and cheer it, no matter what. There's a tribal instinct that takes over in politics that essentially suggests that if the other side hates it, we must be doing something right. There's this weird idea out there that it's okay to lie if it's for your own side. It's okay to fib if it's for your own side. It's okay to cheat if it's for your own side. After all, the other side is doing it. Why would you deprive yourself of those tools? Why would you hamstring yourself? If the other side is willing to do all these terrible things to win, why shouldn't you be willing to do all these terrible things to win? So 2 points here. Number 1, I don't think you actually have to do terrible things to win. If I believed that people had to do terrible things to win, I would not be in politics, and I would not believe in a representative democracy. Because the bottom line is, in a representative democracy, you have to be able to trust that people are going to be able to distinguish truth from falsehood, and it's our job to essentially deprogram people. Because you have millions and millions of Americans who have been programmed by a public education system and a media to believe certain things. But the answer to that is not to lie the way Democrats do. The answer to that is to tell the truth the way Democrats don't. To deprogram people, to tell the truth. And that also holds true for people on your own side, because you don't have the credibility, you, especially young people, you don't have the moral wherewithal to be able to stand up for your principles if you're not willing to stand up for your principles even when it may hurt you in the temporary now. And that's not some sort of deep read on the last election cycle. I'm not talking about who people voted for right now, because I think there are a lot of good reasons to vote for President Trump. I'm talking about the tendency that we all have in knee-jerk fashion to, instead of analyzing the issues, instead of analyzing the principles, say, people on my side like it, therefore it's good. And that's unacceptable. Something is either good or it's bad. It is not better or worse because people on your own side like it or do not. And that does take some courage. That takes some bravery to say to people who you've looked up to, people who you've listened to, that maybe they're wrong, that maybe they're doing things and saying things that are inappropriate, that takes some bravery. And again, that's something we're going to need to inculcate in our own movement. The third area in which we can be brave is probably the second hardest one. I think the one I just tackled is the hardest one. But the second hardest one is not to be intimidated by the other side. The fact that you're at this convention means that you're not intimidated by the other side. You're already brave enough to show up, show your face, be counted, learn. That's already a step in the right direction. But it is very difficult being in the public eye and fighting these battles every day. It's hard enough when you're on a college campus and just trying not to get disinvited from the cool kid parties. It's hard enough when the professor is staring you in the eye and attempting to grade you down because you said something that you believed in. The nice thing here is that most of what the left does when it comes to demonizing you and calling you a jerk and calling you a racist, sexist, bigot, homophobe who hates the poor, most of what the left does when they do this is basically a phantom. It's a phantom monster. Once they've unleashed that and you say, no, you're just totally full of crap, there's no place for them to go from there. Because that was their trump card. That was as far as they are willing to go. Their entire worldview is based on the idea that you are a lesser person than they are, that you are a worse person than they are. And when you take that away from them, there's nothing left for them to fight you with. And that's why it's, I think, fun in a way to